This episode of Bullet Heaven was made with a copy of the game provided by Zerodiv. In episode 205 of Bullet Heaven, we took a look at Zerodiv, a side-scrolling shooter with beat-em-up elements by Psikyo and released by Zerodiv for the Nintendo Switch. Zerodiv was rough. However, Zerodiv wasn't the first side-scroller by Psikyo, rare as they are. The year before, they also released another, Sengoku Blade, also known as Tengai in the West. Tengai for Nintendo Switch was released on March 29, 2018 by Zerodiv. It's another rare example of a Psikyo Yoko shooter, and shows just how good a Psikyo side-scroller can be. First released to arcades in 1996, Sengoku Blade and Tengai would also see a number of other releases on many platforms. Unlike Zerodiv, it features much better gameplay mechanics and the kind of personality we've come to expect from Psikyo. Let's take a closer look. As with Samurai Aces, players have their choice from several different characters, each with unique fire patterns, movement rates, and bomber attacks. 5 are selectable, but a code can also be inputted to unlock Ian, a hidden character making his return from Samurai Aces. There's a good amount of choice here, and each character feels pretty balanced. The control in Tengai is extremely similar to Samurai Aces. 8-way movement, rapid shots map to A, charge shots map to Y, and bombers map to X and B. But these controls have been vastly improved over Samurai Aces as well. Not only is player movement sharp and responsive, holding the Y button to enable special charged abilities is much more swift. As with all other Psikyo shooters we've seen so far, there's a progressive power-up system that increases players' shot power to a maximum level of 4 through the collection of red power scrolls. Tengai features a few changes to the formula though. For instance, the maximum power level is no longer timed as it was in some of the earlier games. In addition, starting with power level 2, the player gains a companion familiar or weapon depending on who is being used on which the player's charged attacks hinge. This system works way better than Samurai Ace's special attacks, especially since each has a unique behavior. Like with other Psikyo games, directly colliding with enemies will drop the player's power level by 1 rather than dying. Colliding with bullets though? Pure death. Bomber attacks do a great job of heavily damaging bosses and clearing out crowded stage sections. These bombers can be fairly liberally used thanks to additional pickups in every stage. Additional bomber attacks can be collected through blue B scrolls. Most of these attacks are localized and sometimes slightly delayed in nature, with only Junuses allowing for a full-screen bullet clear. But in the grand scheme of things, they are much more usable and better balanced than in Samurai Aces. The biggest gameplay change to Tengai is the change of perspective. Tengai is played in a Yoko horizontal manner, which, by default, is better displayed without the need to turn the system or monitor on its side. This makes enemy shots and obstacles really clear to see and anticipate, even if the gameplay on the whole is mostly identical to Psikyo's vertical shooters. Tengai is played over the course of 7 stages with a default stock of 3 lives and 3 credits. There's a pretty intense rank increase as players make their way through the game, and the typical Psikyo rules apply here. Players take on the first 3 stages in random order, with the possibility of continuing immediately where they left off, if they lose all of their lives. Uncharacteristically of Psikyo though, players can continue where they die, even in later stages. Like most other Psikyo shooters, the difficulty curve in Tengai is very steep, but more manageable than games like Gunbird or Samurai Aces. Even on difficulties 1 to 4, it still presents a formidable challenge that will surely best players of novice to intermediate skill. Enabling unlimited credits in the meta options menu can help players learn and map out later stages for a smoother clear. The gameplay tweaks and refinements to Tengai make it a game that's very playable by comparison to most of Psikyo's games. Again, it's definitely still hard, but Tengai is also very balanced overall. Beyond the time it will take to get through unscathed, Tengai also holds a decent amount of replay value through the game's story scenes between each stage. Each character has their own arc, with co-op games changing the story depending on what character each player plays with. A huge amount of endings are available, boosting Tengai's replay value greatly. Most importantly though, it's actually fun to play. Beyond the story aspect, Tengai also has an even higher replay value thanks to its refined scoring elements. Psikyo keeps its scoring relatively simple in Tengai, but adds a couple of twists and changes to the overall structure Psikyo players have come to expect. Enemy destruction is, of course, the name of the game when it comes to the core scoring in Tengai. As such, the bulk of a player's score will come from simply defeating as many enemies as possible as the game progresses. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Coin collection also returns with a bit of a literal twist. Certain enemies and emplacements will drop a large coin that can be collected for bonus points. Unlike Samurai Aces though, this coin will have a value between 200 and 2,000 points depending on its rotation. Players will receive 200 points when just the edge of the coin shows, and 2,000 when the full face of the coin is exposed. The coin will also change in value between these two extremes, and the sound played will be altered depending on the amount of points collected. Collecting power-ups beyond level 4 will also result in a bonus score, in this case 4,000 points. This value is much higher than many of Psikyo's previous games and can add a decent amount of pointage to the player's overall tally over the course of the game. Like Gunbird and Samurai Aces before it, a player's score will not be lost if the player chooses to continue, meaning that at some point, the extend score will be triggered regardless of how many times the player uses another credit. But players looking to nab that one credit clear can use these pointers to hit the game's extend score to get that small boost to keep the game going as long as they can. Players can even take this to the extreme by ratcheting the extra credits to 0 in the options. As is the case with all of Zerodiv's Psikyo's Switch games we've seen so far, there are no online leaderboards in this version of the game. If score preservation is something players want, they'll need to hit the Switch's screen cap button and upload to the forum of their choice. That is, of course, unless Zerodiv decides to add this admittedly crucial modern function to their games. In the case of Tengai's presentation, this is more or less exactly what we wanted in a side-scrolling shooter in terms of visuals and sound. Being made only 1 year before Soul Divide, we could only really wonder what Psikyo's 1997 Misstep could have been like with a full pixel art presentation. They may look a little on the simple side, especially when blurring filters are removed from the visuals in general, but the player sprites in Tengai do a much better job of representing their characters than Soul Divide's iffy 3D pre-renders do. Especially in the case of Junus's bomber attack, a lavish, large-frame character animation befitting of classic Psikyo designs seen in games like Strikers 1945 accompanies the bomber effects. And as good as some of the backgrounds were when it came to smoke and cloud effects in Soul Divide, we just have to go with the sort of great pixel art detail and extensive parallax found in Tengai. They're just better produced and look great the whole way through the game. We like the cheesy musical selections in Soul Divide, especially between stages and during story scenes, but all in all, the music in Tengai contributes to a great atmosphere that we wish was in Samurai Aces from the very start. Likewise, the sound effects and voice samples in Tengai work as well as we've seen in a lot of mid-period Psikyo titles like Gunbird and Strikers 1945 too. Great explosions, good shot sounds, and clear voice samples come together with a solid OST to make a very good audio presentation overall. The story arcs in Tengai may be a little on the simple side, and some of the translation can be a little wonky, just as in previous Zerodiv titles, but the sheer amount of them, especially playing co-op games, really does extend the playtime to a great level. This level of story interaction is also kind of uncommon outside of other Psikyo games, so it's always a welcome feature when it happens. As is typical of these games though, there are some pretty risque situations between certain characters here too. We always seem to get the most questionable endings. What's up with that? Finally, Tengai's meta options allow the player to tweak game settings like lives and credits, adding or removing visual filters like image softening and scan lines, or stretching the game to a 16:9 aspect ratio. The instructions also include the code to unlock Tengai's hidden character, Ian. What a great touch! So, how does Tengai stack up? Let's take a look. The control in Tengai is much more balanced than a lot of Psikyo games, especially Samurai Aces. There are a lot of times that the control is a touch slippery, but otherwise it's very responsive. Once again, the Psikyo calamity strikes again with fast bullets and a difficulty that is designed to punish casual players and steal quarters. Playing on Monkey makes us feel a little inadequate, but Tengai is plenty challenging even on difficulty level 1. With 7 longish stages, 3 of which are randomized from the start, Tengai has a lot of staying power. Even though a lack of online leaderboards might hurt Tengai in the long run, all of the many story arcs with dynamic interactions make for a great amount of replay value. Compared to Soul Divide, Tengai is way more along the lines of what we'd expect to see out of a Psikyo side-scroller. Great 2D pixel art visuals with way less in the way of pre-renders and lots of parallax make for a great visual presentation. In stark contrast to Samurai Aces, the soundtrack in Tengai is much better thought out and composed. Great sound effects and good voice work contribute to an overall decent audio presentation. The idea of a familiar-based special attack is pretty novel, but outside of this, Tengai doesn't offer much new to its established formulas. But it does refine on all of the concepts it features: better charge times, better scoring opportunities, and a worthwhile side-scrolling take on the typical Psikyo framework. Once again, Zerodiv has made Tengai available for just $8 making for a very affordable game with a ton of replay. It's another great game for so little money. Well, you've already heard this many times here already. You get it. Tengai is how to do a horizontal Psikyo shmup right. There are comparatively few Psikyo horis, but as of now, this is the best one we've played so far of the two that have been released for the Switch. Tengai for Nintendo Switch gets a 4.25 out of 5. You can get a copy of Tengai for Nintendo Switch for about $8 on the Nintendo eShop today. Finally, a Psikyo side-scroller worth playing.
Thank God it wasn't another Soul Divide.
It makes me wonder if there are any other Psikyo horis out there. Time for some research.
All the frickin' research!
Ha, nice. But for now, we need to dive into Dragon Blaze.